Welcome to the Real View podcast, where Ohio Realtors connect you to innovators and influencers, keeping you with the real view of real estate. Whether you're a broker, agent, first-time homebuyer, industry leader, or just happen to stumble upon our podcast today, you can expect to hear tips, tools, tricks, interesting information, and so much more from the experts in Ohio's real estate game. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Real View podcast. I'm your host, Allison Wiley. Today is a special day, and I didn't tell Tim this, who's my special guest today. Tim Stanford, District 2 Vice President, top winner in individual transaction credit for our President's Sales Club this year. You all know him as a part of our Ohio Realtor family, and I'm super excited he's our guest today because this is the 100th episode of the Real View podcast that we are recording today. So you are my 100th guest on the show. This is our 100th episode, and wow, welcome to the show, and thank you.
I made it top 100.
You did, yeah. So we are just in the top here all around. So yes. So it's great to have you with me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Congratulations on your President's Sales Club and
thank you.
Your DVP service, which we're going to talk a lot about today. But welcome onto the show, and thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, the DVP stuff probably isn't as exciting as the President's Sales Club, but we'll try to jazz it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, all good and all important. And I just have to say thank you again to all of our listeners for making it 100 episodes and for all of your support throughout this journey that we started almost 2 years ago. It has been quite the journey, and thank you guys for your support into making it 100 episodes, and we look forward to 100 more. So I have to shout out to all of the listeners and supporters of the show as well. But Tim, before we get started on today's show, I have to ask our signature question that we ask all of the guests on the podcast, which is, since the show is called The Real View, I would like to know, what is the best view that you've ever seen?
The best view, I probably could say one of the most memorable views was that a number of years ago in my misspent youth, I did quite a bit of whitewater rafting. This year, when we're talking about all of the droughts in the West and low river levels, back in the 80s, there was a very high river level, and they actually shut down the Colorado River for a couple of weeks because the water was so high. And I had the opportunity to go down the Colorado River, 9 of us in 6 boats, just days after they reopened it. And we're going to the first rapid. There's a lot of water. It's the Grand Canyon. As we're approaching the first rapid, there is a boat, a dory, a river-running boat, 12 feet above the water on top of a rock. And we've got 200 miles to go on the river, and that's the first thing we see. That was a sobering of that. Do you know what you're getting yourself into?
Yeah. What you weren't expecting that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but it was very cool and very something that you'll always remember.
No, always remember, yes.
Yeah. Did you guys make it through? Okay?
I'm here, yes, as living proof, yes, but it was...
No, that's awesome. Very, very cool. Okay, so I want to talk about your career in real estate. How did you get started? Did you know this was something that you wanted to do? What was your journey like to get you to where you are today?
My journey, I was going to say, I'm really, kind of grew up in the Westerville area. I was a Westerville South grad and went to Otterbein. Started off teaching. My wife and I met. I left teaching after a few years. We had quite a bit of success. I was an art teacher. There were 500 kids in the school, and I had 108 of them involved in art, and I had 3 of them that had been recognized here in Columbus for the Governor's Art Show, kind of all state art students. And one of them made the mistake of saying, "Well, what are you going to do next?" And I thought, oh gosh, I don't know. I guess I should do something next. And so I went into sales, sold franchises throughout Ohio, and then my wife and I moved to San Francisco and started selling art there. But as I said, we wanted to have a family. San Francisco may not have been the best place to raise kids because we were living right on Nob Hill. Her father had a real estate brokerage in Lima, and she was from Lima. So we moved back to Lima, got my real estate license in 1986, and got my broker's license in 1993, and here we are.
Yeah, and hooked ever since, right? Never stopped.
No.
I want to talk about your big accomplishment this year as being the top winner of the individual transaction credit category of the President's Sales Club. Tell us a little bit about what that is, what that means, and kind of how you were able to achieve that.
Moving back and picking up the brokerage, we bought it from my father-in-law in the early 2002. I had the opportunity to sell it then to our credit union, Superior Credit Union in Lima. Part of that transaction was that I would stick around and continue to be broker for a while. And that the employment contract kind of ran its course, and the decision was that I would just go back to selling. A year ago at convention, I was looking at the top 5 and I kind of thought, oh gosh, I've got a lot of stuff lined up and I kind of wonder what that'll be like next year. And so that's that. I did have a lot of stuff lined up and it seemed like I'd been pretty busy, but it was really coming back into sales just in the last couple of years after, being more of a managing other agents' activities for the last 20.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was this kind of a goal of yours then, was to win, or just kind of something you had thought about and maybe figured you had qualifications for?
It's funny because transitioning from agent to broker to brokerage owner, back to broker, back to agent, it really kind of is going from being where you were a player to where you were a coach to you're back in the game being a player. Back in the days before I was principal broker, I was involved in a lot of big transactions. I was going to say I helped assemble the site for the Lima Senior High School when they moved. Had to assemble a 40-acre site in a developed downtown central business district that involved assembling more than 200 parcels. I've always looked for how can we sell more real estate sooner, and so not so much a goal. It's just kind of that's the way I've focused.
Yeah, that was kind of just your business and the way you went about things. No, that's really cool. What was the coolest real estate moment or experience for you that you've ever had?
The coolest real estate moment? Gosh, there are so many that are not cool.
Or we could do a bad one. We could do either or.
No, well, yeah, I was going to say on the way down here, I was having a conversation about a closing that was supposed to have occurred yesterday. That the e-notarization had technical difficulties, and trying to keep everybody happy that the buyer is doing everything they can to get it done, but that the technology is not helping us out. But the coolest real estate moment, I think probably there's several, and I'll kind of characterize that. A lot of real estate transactions occur where you have a sign in the yard, somebody calls from the sign, you go and show them the property, you sell the property. I think that, and I used to tell this to agents too, that the real hallmark that you've kind of arrived as a professional is when you see a property and it's not for sale, and somebody that should buy it, but they aren't really in the market, and you put them together. That's really where you're recognizing, you're beginning to understand the market, and that your neighborhood, and who are there and who's involved. And so those are the moments. And I was going to say, and just this past week, I had a purchaser buying a property. They had a property that they were thinking that they would have to sell, and I said, I know somebody who will buy it. And so we showed it. They made a full price offer. It was a commercial property. Those are great times when you can see it happening. I mean, it's kind of like Luke Skywalker using the Force.
Yeah.
Use the real estate force.
Those are the special moments that kind of makes it full circle. Wow, I'm really I made it. Because that kind of the feeling that you get, whenever you get to that moment. No, that's super cool.
Yes, real estate nirvana.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. So I want to talk about your involvement too in the association and at the different levels in the association world. We mentioned you are the DVP for District Number 2. What made you decide to get involved, and what would your advice be to other people who maybe want to get more involved but don't know where to start?
Yeah, back in the 90s, I guess I was elected. At that point, our local board had a building trustee as an elected position, and I got elected to be building trustee. The EO at the time, who was a former real estate agent and who had a certain amount of salesmanship to her, said, well, presumptively, you're going to go through the chairs, aren't you? And I was so naive. I didn't know what the chairs were. Yeah. And so, she explained, well, you should get on the board, you should become, treasurer, become vice president, president-elect, become president. And so I was like, okay, well, those things kind of happened, and I've been president 3 times. One of the aspects, it's hard when you're selling to think that you're going to take time to serve on a committee or to hold an elected position. And a lot of times it's difficult to grasp, the realtor part of it because you're so focused on the real estate part of it. What I've found, oddly, is that the involvement has led directly to more real estate sales. I mentioned the Lima Senior Project. That was a direct result of I was board president, and we had a local housing group ask for us to appoint somebody to serve on the housing. I couldn't get anyone to volunteer, so I appointed myself. And this was before the state had their funding for new schools, but we were working on kind of a strategy for how should housing go and develop. And it was the better part of a year and a half or so before they had the announcement. But when they had the announcement, then we kind of had already looked at all the neighborhoods and had kind of a triage of where areas were likely to be redeveloped. So I remember I called my attorney, Matt Huffman, who's the current state senator, back in the day when he was just, city council president, Matt
Wow.
Huffman. And I said, Matt, got this chance to get these schools here. I said, I think what the school district needs is a real estate consultant. And he said, I think that's an excellent idea. He made a call, I made a call, and I talked to the schools, and they agreed, and they needed a real estate consultant. And so, yeah, the story is Matt Huffman and I drove around Lima and decided where Lima Senior is going to go.
Wow. That's awesome. What a cool moment.
But it was a direct result of being president, becoming involved in this organization. Some of the success of sales this year was I sold a number of investment properties. We had a landlord that was divesting. That was a direct result of me being legislative chair, because there had been a interest circulated in the city of Lima about having a point of sale inspection. And so we were fighting it. And as legislative chair, I was kind of taking the point on it and addressing city council. Well, the landlord noticed. And so he was like, hey, and I knew the landlord anyway, but he was appreciative of the efforts and the support. When they were ready to sell, then they called me.
Wow. So it grew your resume, not only your resume, but also you saw a direct result from being involved in your business and what you did every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the Realtor organization has been a path road, an inroad into involvement in the community and connection to housing kind of on a bigger scale and a bigger stage than, again, just having a sign in the yard and have somebody call you from the sign.
Yeah. I mean, if there's ever a better reason to join and get involved and be on a committee and serve at your different levels, state, local, and at the national level. I mean, you just explained it perfectly there. Yeah. Yeah. So anyone listening, get involved. You sky is the limit, right? You never know. So how do you find time to do all of this? I mean, to be a top sales award winner, to, serve the association on the different levels that you do, to be a family guy. I mean, how do you find time to do it all?
Well, I mean, you stay busy. I mean, so it's good not to be bored. And it's always good to find creative solutions. I was going to say, my wife has always been very supportive to a degree of, okay, stop working. There are only so many hours in the day. And back when I was more in the management position, I would tell new agents, when you first get licensed, you suddenly have this whole horizon of, I've got, I'm an independent contractor. I don't have, presuming you don't have a regular job or a part-time job. And so, I'm a realtor now, and I've got all this time all day. What am I going to do with it? How do I fill it? What do I, and invariably you see those people kind of mature over the course of months and years maybe, to where they're coming back and they're saying, I've got all this stuff to do and I don't have any time. And so it's kind of learning the nuts and bolts of how it is that you go about finding real estate, getting through the transactions, and bringing people together and finding that common ground.
This episode of The Real View is brought to you by the Ohio Association of Community Colleges. Ohio's network of community colleges provides accessible training that accommodates the busy lifestyles of aspiring real estate professionals at half the price of a traditional university. With convenient locations in every part of the state, as well as online options, Ohio's community colleges are your smart choice for pre-licensing education. For more details or to start the journey to a real estate career, visit the education page at ohiorealtors.org and then click on the pre-license course locations. What motivates you and what keeps you going to achieve, everything that you have and to keep going? How do you keep that passion and momentum going, throughout maybe some hard times or just the day-to-day stuff that comes up? Some days you just don't feel like it, right? So how do you keep yourself going and motivated?
I was going to say, I like money. I am competitive. I like being the best. Or strive for it. I joke with people. I will often say, people don't realize how much prayer is involved with real estate, but it does take a lot of faith. And one of the kind of the things I come back to is that as long as you're working earnestly, there's no wasted effort. I mean, so that you may, the example I think of is that I'd worked with some people and we had gone out, looked at dozens of houses, and they couldn't find what they wanted. And they decided that they were going to add on. It seemed to be a wasted effort. A year later, they got transferred. And so they were calling saying, hey, can you come sell our house? Because they had done all that. So I planted that seed and ended up getting a listing from it, not exactly the way I was thinking that I would be getting it. And I guess that's probably the biggest thing for success in real estate, is to be able to embrace that idea of delayed gratification, to not expect that you're going to get some reward right now, right today, but that you're going to be rewarded for your efforts some point.
Yeah, down the line that it might not come right away, but you never know. And that known maybe not right now could turn into maybe someday.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great bit of advice. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout your career in real estate? What has it taught you, or what's been your biggest takeaway or lesson that you've learned?
Biggest lesson. I think it's along those lines of the not becoming too focused on the here and now, but to keep working on developing business for the future and looking at how it is that you can build things. That it's Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a real estate career. That it takes time. That there's no substitute for it. It's just putting in the effort, putting in the time, and working on kind of perfecting your craft.
And hard work. And I know one of the misconceptions that could be out there about this industry is that, get your license and you'll just start selling homes immediately. What do you say to that? And maybe could you talk a little bit about the hard work that kind of goes into reaching this level of success?
There's way beyond the pre-licensing classes and the law and the principles and practices that's all good exposure, but it just keeps going and going. How it is that this real estate thing works, this bundle of rights, and how you convey them, how they're transferred, how they're encumbered, and undoing all of those things. I had another transaction that was kind of on the bigger side. It was a landlord that went bankrupt, and they had 196 properties that court needed sold. And I was I called the trustee, and I said, hey, it was a nuanced call because the properties were listed with another brokerage, but the landlord had gone bankrupt. The bankruptcy court had appointed trustee to take over. So I'm calling the trustee, not the owner. And what I was offering was property management rather than asking for the listing. Mm-hmm. And the trustee said, your call is remarkably timely. Now, this is an attorney. Your call is remarkably timely. And he said, can you meet me at our office tomorrow morning? Because we're going to meet the U.S. Marshals.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he says, you have a suit? I said, yes, I have a suit. He goes, well, wear the suit. We want to look good when we take over the business. And he goes, and this is a cold call. I did not know this guy before, really. And he said, it'll be a while before we get through the paperwork, but you're my guy.
Wow.
And I lost track of what the point was exactly I was making. There are transactions out there that you just don't know about. Timeliness part of it was that minutes before I called, he had gotten a fax from the owner saying that he was suing him. He was in the position of that he was now in charge of this property. His plan had been to let the owner kind of run it and he would monitor it. Now that the owner was suing him, he was in litigation and couldn't allow him to continue to run it. And so I was just kind of in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So I remember the grand point I was going to make there was that, okay, so he gets all these properties. We got to sell these 200 properties, and he's stuck in the position, this is, in terms of how ownership interests are transferred. He's wanting to sell the property. The courts have told him, liquidate the properties. He wants us to sell the properties. We're selling the properties. There were some of the properties that were not in foreclosure. They had defaulted on the loans, but for whatever reason, the mortgage holder hadn't initiated foreclosure. And because the mortgage holder hadn't initiated foreclosure, the trustee wasn't really empowered to be able to sell those properties.
Right.
And so we were having another conversation, and he says, I don't know how to get these out of the court case. And I said, why don't you just deed them to the lender? And he says, can I do that? And I said, yeah, you can deed the property to anybody. Wow. And so he goes, that's what we're going to do. We're going to just deed them back to the lender. They get them. They have the interest in them. There it is. It's your property. You figure it out.
But that's the expertise that when we talk about, why realtors are so valuable, it's like stuff like that.
Right.
It's the fact you had the knowledge to be able to give advice to someone and literally solve a problem for them. And that's kind of, I think, what's great about this industry and why realtors will always be important to the communities, because this is such a complicated transaction and process that we're walking our clients through. And we are truly the experts on that. And that is like such a perfect story, of being the expert and being able to really help somebody with their real estate issue. So great story. That was awesome. Great job. What advice do you have to realtors to get to your level?
And yes, I guess that gets to the advice is to really become familiar with what is taking place. I mean, I know it's a small point, but I was talking about with some agents the other day. It seems as if there has been a diminished interest in agents attending closings. And I think it's beneficial for newer agents and for experienced agents to be there, not really representing your client, but being another set of eyes and ears to be able to be supportive. If you've been to many closings, different people handle it different. And so it's there can be benefits to having the agent there. First of all, you hear kind of the way things are wrapped up, and it kind of gets through that mechanics of what is for sale and how it is that it gets sold. But also that you begin to recognize when somebody is, glossed over something that's kind of important, and that you can kind of add that and flesh it out, being careful not to step on the closer's toes unnecessarily. Also, your point is not to be there to be Mr. Know-It-All, but there's sometimes you can make a contribution, you can get help. So yeah, I think attending closings is probably the best way. And even if you can tag along to somebody else's closing if you're brand new, if you're looking under your wing, that's kind of where all the sausage gets put in the casing.
There you go. I like that analogy. That's cool. What do you think the biggest challenges and opportunities are with some of the current conditions of the market these days? What do you think are the challenges and opportunities that exist out there? I know it's changing so quickly, but from your perspective, kind of what do you see and what is out?
The biggest current challenge, of course, is going to be, having an environment of rising interest rates. And that's something that's going to be new for people that have not been in the industry very long. Otherwise, you have to be in the industry for a real long time to be able to think back to when 9, 10, 12% interest was good, and hearing horror stories of, 18 or 20% interest. There are lots of ways that people can buy properties that we have not been using very much in recent years, like land contracts or owner carryback of a mortgage. And those are things that you want to become familiar with and kind of like how it is that works, how it can be used. A lot of it's going to be communication with the lender to be able to see, what the lender can do, how it is that you can buy time for somebody to hopefully get into a more favorable interest rate market. Also looking at we've had a lot of focus on fixed rate mortgages because the rates have been so low, but looking at some of the adjustable rate products and realistically discussing with your clients what their horizon is. I mean, if they're looking at like a 5-year time frame in the house, then a 5-year adjustable mortgage is like a no-brainer. And there's a lot of different options that are like that. And so becoming more familiar with the finance aspect of it, what can be done through the traditional lenders as well as using the resources of the buyers and sellers.
A lot of creativity that, realtors are going to have with those interest rates and things like that coming up. What about inventory? What are you seeing from an inventory perspective? We know this is something we've talked about on the podcast multiple times, but what about the inventory issue that's been out there, and what do you see that shaping out to be?
I think that the inventory issue, I think it goes all the way back to the Great Recession. I remember speaking to a local builders group back around 2010, 2011, and telling them, I wished I had some good news for them, but I had no hope for them, that they just were not going to be building for a while. And that we're seeing the results of that the housing supply has not kept up with the demand. I'm very excited. I think it's November that we're planning on having the workforce housing study come out.
Yes.
That the realtors have asked the University of Cincinnati to compose. I'm very interested in that as kind of a document of guidance. I think that it has an opportunity to be able to provide some direction for the entire state in terms of how do we address housing over not just in the next 6 months, but over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, that's going to be coming out real soon. And I know we are going to have Brad Evans, who worked on the study at the University of Cincinnati. He is going to be joining us for a podcast, too, to discuss the findings of the study. So super excited for that to come out.
Huge, very significant.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal. And we're really excited to see the results of that.
And folks who were able at the convention in Cleveland, if you're able to attend, they gave kind of a sneak peek of some of the information.
Yeah.
So it's, again, another reason to be at the convention, because sometimes people think, it's too expensive, it's too far to go, that there really isn't any valuable information there. Well, it's information there that you could get 2-3 months ahead of the rest of the state.
Yeah, so valuable, that kind of stuff. And I know Daphne Hawk spoke on it as well, just the value of attending those conventions and what that means, even just from a regulatory standpoint. You want to make sure the best realtors are the ones who are involved and go to these conventions. They keep themselves out of trouble and they really achieve great levels of success.
And it was really nice to see her there so visibly and so prominently and to have an interest and to be engaged. And not the previous administration wasn't, but it just there was a real enthusiasm that was nice.
Yeah, no, it really was. And I know we are also going to have her on the podcast episode up and coming really soon. So you are in some good company soon with these podcast guests. So what is next for you? What is the future look like? What are you hoping to achieve? What are some goals out there? Or what's in the future for you?
In addition to real estate, it's been a busy year personally. 13 months ago, we have 3 children. 13 months ago. None of them were engaged. 2 of them are now married, and the other one is going to get married a year from now.
So you're giving my parents hope is what I'm hearing, because they are like, hello, they have 3 kids as well, and we're all in that boat. So I should tell them to listen to you, right?
It went quickly. Yeah, our youngest got engaged first, and our oldest got engaged last, but he got married first. And so he was married, and their wedding was in San Francisco, which is where he lives. He works for a company called Grammarly. And
I know Grammarly. I'm a user of Grammarly. I love their products. Great to help your writing. If you guys are writers out there, it's a great product.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's very involved. Was one of their early employees, and he had right out of college. He had worked for Google for several years as a product manager, and so he's done very well. But we just had a reception for him at our house. That was in September. In between there, let's see, we also had a nephew got married at the beginning of May. Our son got married at the end of May. Our daughter got married the first week of July. Wow. And then we had the reception first week of October at our home. So it's been, we've had to pay for all that. So it's
expensive year.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get caught up, I guess, is what their immediate
More
goal
homes,
is. Yes.
Right?
More homes, yes.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
all of their engagements and weddings. And what an exciting time.
Very exciting time.
Congratulations again on your success as the top President Sales winner in individual transaction credit. What an amazing accomplishment. And thank you for all of your service that you give to the realtor industry. I know we are all stronger because of people like you. So thank you for everything. And thank you for joining me on the show today. It's been so great.
Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys all for tuning in to our 100th episode. It has been so great joining you all for these 100 days. And I will talk to you all next week. Have a great week. Thanks. Thank you for listening to The Real View. That wraps up today's episode. You can keep up with the latest on the podcast at ohiorealtors.org/therealview and on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Have questions, comments, or suggestions? We want to hear from you. Email us at podcast@ohiorealtors.org. We'll see you next time.